Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we're going to build the UI of a social networking website like Facebook using HTML and CSS. Now for comparison purpose, this is the original Facebook website and this is the one we are going to build today. Now this is an excellent front-end project for your portfolio as a front-end developer. If you are a beginner in HTML and CSS, you don't have to get overwhelmed. We are going to start from scratch and I'm going to explain everything step by step without skipping any step. You are going to learn how to make this navigation bar with these inputs right here, these icons right here, and also these icons and this image right here in the right hand side of the navbar. You're also going to learn how to make this left sidebar right here and it's going to be scrollable. We are going to make this right sidebar with this friend request section. We are going to learn how to do all this birthday section and also the contact section, and the right sidebar is also going to be scrollable. Now we are also going to build the feeds. We are going to work on this input right here and all these buttons right here. We're going to work on this status section, and the status section is going to be scrollable. You can scroll through the status of users. And also we're going to design each post. Each post is going to have the user details, the user image, the user name, and the timestamp of when the user created the post. And also we're going to have this icon at the post header. We're also going to have the post text. I'm going to have the post image. Not just that, we're going to create the post reactions. We're going to create these overlapping images right here, these 5 comments right here, also these action buttons right here to like, comment, and to share. And you'll be able to scroll through the feed and see other posts. I see how smooth that's looking. Now we're not going to stop there. We're going to also make it fully responsive. Now when I start to reduce the screen size, you're going to notice that it's going to be fully responsive. For every screen size you view this web page on, it's going to be fully responsive even on mobile devices. You are going to learn how to do all this in this video. Now if you are excited about this video, smash on the like button and leave a comment below. It's going to help the YouTube algorithm push this content to more people who are going to find it helpful. I just basically consider it as a little way of supporting the channel. And lastly, if you've not subscribed, ensure you do that and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss out on helpful web development tutorials like this. And before we dive into it, if you'd like to code along with this project, I'm going to leave a startup file in my GitHub. I'll leave a link to that repo in the description below. And also, if you'd like to view this project live, I'm going to leave a link below to the live demo because the project is basically hosted on Vercel. Now I already have my index.html file created, and in my header tag, I have this link right here that's basically importing front awesome icon to our project. And I also add this style.css file up here that's linking this index.html file to this style.css file right here. And inside this style.css file up here, I'm importing Google fonts from Google, and down here I'm actually applying that font to my project Poppins. And up here you can see the colors I'm going to use for this project. I've set them to a root variable. And as for the images, these are the images we are going to use for this project. Now if you'd like to follow along with the project step by step, you want to follow along with everything we are doing in this project, I'm going to leave a link to a GitHub repo that has all the startup files, including all this initial code and all these images. All you can just do is just clone that repository. Now this is a public repo, which means you can easily just clone it into your local machine, and it has all the images we are going to be using for this project. All the images right here. Now inside my Visual Studio Code, I'll just close this up. Then I'm going to click on Go Live to actually run this on a web browser. And it's going to open our project right here in the web browser, and we have absolutely nothing in the web page. So let's start working on our project. So I'm going to head back to my index.html file. Inside my body tag, I'm going to create a nav tag. Now that nav tag I created is what is going to house every item in the navigation bar. This post list, this search input, these icons right here in the nav bar, and also these icons on the right side. And this nav is going to have a div, and this first div is going to have a class name of left navbar. It's going to have another div that's going to have a class name of center navbar. Then it's going to have another div that's going to have a class name of Rightsidebar. Now for the contents of the left nav bar, it's going to have a p tag that's going to act as our logo. It's going to say postly. And after that, it's going to have a div. This div is going to have a class name or search input. Okay. And inside this div, I'm going to have an icon that's going to say class of fast search, which we are going to be getting from this CDN link right here, this font awesome CDN link up here. And this div is also going to have an input, which is going to be of type text, and it's going to have a placeholder of search postly. And you can see that we have the contents of our left nav bar right here. We have our logo postly, our search icon, and our input right here. So let's start styling them up. So I'm going to head to my style.css file. Now first of all, I'm going to apply a background color to our body. I'm going to give the body a background color of this color right here, this light gray color right here. So I'm going to say light gray. Now you're going to notice that the background color is going to change to a light gray. Okay, so next we're going to start styling our nav bar. So I'm going to use that nav tag, nav. I'm going to give it a height, first of all, 55 pixels. Then I'm going to give it a background color of white. Then you can see our nav bar right here with a height of 55 pixels and a background of white. Next, I'm going to apply a box shadow to it. So I'm going to say box shadow 0.2 pixels, 4 pixels, RGBA 0.1 opacity. Now you can see that our nav bar now has a box shadow underneath it. Now I want this nav bar to always be fixed at the top of the web page, no matter what. I always want it to be fixed at the top of the web page. So I'm going to give it a position. I'm going to say position. I use fixed. Then it's going to have a top of 0. It's always going to be at the top of the web page. Left of 0. And it's going to have a width of 100%. Now we don't want the item to be at the extreme end of the navigation bar, so we're going to add a padding to it. So I'm going to say padding. Top and bottom of the nav bar is going to have a padding of 0. Then left and right is going to have a padding of 1%. And that's going to ensure that the items don't start at the extreme end right here. It's going to start around here. Then we can give the item inside the nav bar a display of flex. A justify content. I want it to be space between. Then align items. Align the items vertically center. Okay. And the item are now flex and there's not a space between them. But based on the fact that we don't have any other items in the nav bar, we can now actually see that. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to head to my index.html file. Down here, I'm going to say add a p tag called center nav. Then down here, I'm going to add a p tag called right nav. I'll save that, and then you can see that the items are now flex and there's a space between each item. We have the contents of our left nav bar at the left hand side. We have the contents of our center nav at the center, and then we have the contents of our right nav at the right hand side. All right, and let's style the content of our left nav bar. So I'll copy this class left nav bar. So in my style.css, I'm going to say nav. Then I'll target that class. Now to target a class name, I'm going to use a dot. Put a dot, then you're going to put in the class name. That's this left navbar class name I copied here. So apply the class in CSS, you put a dot, then you paste in the class name right here. Then I'm going to put the styles between this opening squiggly bracket and the closing squiggly bracket. Now the first time I want to apply for the left navbar is that you can see right now that the items of the left navbar are arranged vertically. We don't want it this way. We want them to be arranged horizontally, like we want them to be flexed. So the first type we're going to have, we're going to say display. It's going to have a display of flex. Then align items of center. So align the items vertically center. Then we are going to have a gap of 10. Add a gap of 10 between the elements of the nav bar. Now you can see that the elements of the left nav bar are now arranged horizontally. So next I want to style up this logo. So I'm going to give the logo a class name. I'll give this logo a class name of logo. I head to my style of CSS and target that. I'll say nav dot the left navbar dot logo as that logo class we created. Now first I want to give it a font size of 1.8 rem, a color as a text color. Now we are going to make use of one of those variable colors we created. And now to do that, we are going to see var, and in between this opening and closing bracket, we are going to pass in the color variable. That's this blue color up here, this blue color. Then next, we have to give this a font weight. I'll give it a font weight, I'll say 600. Now you can see that the logo is actually looking better. Now you notice that the more we add content to the left hand side of the nav bar, the more the items of the center nav will start to shift to the right hand side. And what's happening is that these items are occupying the left side of the navigation bar. And the more we add items to the left hand side of the navigation bar, the more it compresses the other items of the other side of the navigation bar. So in CSS, to actually solve this problem, we are going to give each of them a flex property. So for this one, this left nav bar, I want it to have a flex of 1. And that's going to ensure that it's going to occupy as much space as it can get. Right now, you can see that when I give it a flex of 1, it's going to push the contents of the center nav to the extreme end because it's going to occupy majority of the space in the navigation bar. But we want the center nav to be around here and we want the right nav to be around here. So what we can also do is that we also apply a flex property to those other parts of the nav bar. So down here, I'm going to say for my center nav, I want it to occupy a flex of 1.5. And when I save that, I can see that the center nav now starts around here. Now let me add a background color to this element so you can actually see this better. So for the center nav, I'll give it a background color. I'll use red. For the left nav bar, I'll give it a background color. I'll use blue. Then for the right nav bar, paste that right here. The right nav bar, I'll give it a background color. I'll just use green. And when I save that, you can see right now I gave this one a flex of 1. That's why it's occupying up to this point. I gave the center nav a flex of 1.5. That's why it's occupying up to this place. And both of them are actually squishing this right nav. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give this right nav, I'll give this right nav a flex. Same flex I added to the left nav. I want them to occupy equal space. But I want this other one to occupy a larger area, this center nav. That's why I gave it 1.5. Now when I save that, you're going to notice that this left nav bar occupies equal space with this right nav bar right here. And the center nav occupies a greater volume than the right nav and the left nav. So I'm going to get rid of those background colors. Get rid of this. I get rid of this. Now we have gotten a layout of our navbar, we have to label them out because we are going to be writing lots of code so we don't get lost. So up here I'm going to say left navbar. Now comment that off so you understand this stands for the left navbar. I'll copy that. I'm head down here. Then I'm going to say it's going to be the center navbar. Center navbar. Why this one is going to be the right navbar. Right navbar. Then I'll just copy these logo styles and paste underneath this left navbar styles right here. Alright. Now the gap between our input and our logo is not working. Why is that? That's because we are not adding pixels to it. So instead of 10, I'll say 10 pixels. And now you can see that the gap is being applied. So next, we're going to style up this input. So let's start working on that. To do that, we're going to make use of this class we added to this div right here, this search input class. So I'm going to go to my style of CSS file. Down here, I'm going to say nav dot left navbar dot. I'll just copy that class. Copy that class from my search input. Then I'll paste that class right here. We're going to give this a background color of light gray, then a height of 40 pixels and a width of 250 pixels. And now you can see the input container on the left hand side of our navigation bar. Next, I want to align these items at the center, so I'm going to give this a display of flex. Then align items, I'll say center. Now I'm going to add a gap between this icon and this input. So I'm going to give this container a gap. I give it a gap, I'll say 10 pixels. And that's also to ensure that we have a gap between this icon and this input right here. Next, I want to give this a padding. Top and bottom is going to have a padding of 0. Left side is going to have a padding of 10 pixels. Then I'm going to give it a cursor of pointer, a color of this variable color right here, dark gray. And lastly, it's going to have a border radius of 30 pixels, and that's going to curve it at the edges. It's going to curve it at the edges right here, that border radius of 30 pixels. Now the icon is already looking good because of that dark gray color we applied, so there's really no need to style that up. It's in the right size. So next we have to style up this input. So to do that, I want to go back to my CSS. I'll copy this right here. Then I need this place right here. I'll paste that right here. Now I'll target the input inside this input container. Now I'm going to give this input a width of 100% and a height of 100%. That's going to ensure that it's going to take 100% of the width and height of its parent container. You can see right now it's going to stretch out to occupy the entire width and height of its parent container. But right now you can see that this our input right now has a background color of white. So what we could do is that we can go to our inputs. We're going to give this a background color. We're going to use transparent. That way it's going to retain the original background color of its container right here. But now I have this outline and border around it. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to add a border of none. Add a border. I don't want to have any border. And also I don't want it to have any outline. I'll give it none. And that's also ensure that we don't have those border around this our input, and we can type on this input and it's very clean. Now what I'm going to do next is that I'm going to take these two styles, this border and outline none. I'll close that off. Now I'm going to go up here and create a general class. I'll say input. Then I'm going to paste that in here. That way any input I create in this project is going to have a border of none and outline of none. So when I go back to the web page, nothing really changes. Our border and our outline are not there. So lastly, I'll just give this input, the text inside, a font size. I'll give it 1 rem. That's looking way better. We are done with the left nav, but let's start working on the center nav. So I'm going to go to my index.html file. I'll get rid of this p tag right here. Now for our center nav, it's going to house these 5 icons right here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Alright, so that's what our center nav is going to house. So inside this center nav, I'm going to add a anchor tag. And this anchor tag is not going to point anywhere, so I'll put in a hash there. Then I'm going to add an icon. And this icon is going to have a class of as far home. Okay. Then I'll drag that down multiple times. 1, 2, 3, 4. This one is going to be video. This one is going to be store. This one is going to be users. And this one is going to be, I think, users, user cycle. And check out the output. We are missing one icon. We have the home, the video, the store, the users, but we don't have the user cycle. I made a mistake there. Not user cycle, it's user cycle. And yeah, we have all our 5 icons right here. So let's start styling them up. So I'm going to head to my style.css file. Go to my style.css file. Now I'll scroll down to the center nav styles. This center nav styles is labeled right here. Now what I want is that I want the icons to occupy equal space inside their container. Equal space. So I'm going to give them a display of grid. First of all, I'm going to give the container that houses those icons as a center nav. I'll give it a display. I'm going to use grid. Now next, I'm going to give it a place item. I want to place the items at the center. Save that. Now you notice that the icons are now at the center of the center nav. Now I want them to be arranged horizontally and I want them to have equal space in the container. So what I will do is I'm going to give it a grid template columns of 1FR, 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 1FR. Okay, I'll save that. Now you can see that the icons are now arranged in the center nav, and each of the icons are occupying equal spacing. But we have a problem. This code is too long. We can't write 1FR. It's too long. What if there's a shorter way we can do this in CSS? There's actually a shorter way. So we can get rid of this. Then we're going to say repeat 5 times, then 1FR. I'll save that. Now you can see the icons are still arranged equally in the center nav bar. So next we have to start styling the individual icons in the center nav. So I'm going to go to my style of CSS file. I'll copy this. I'll paste that underneath here. And just target the anchor tag in there. First of all, I want to give them a height of 55 pixels, which is the same height our navigation bar has. Then I'll give you the font size of 1.2 rem and a color of this dark gray color right here. And you can see that the icons are at the top of the web page. Remember that I will give this container, each of the container that houses the icon, a height of 55 pixels. So the icons are starting at the top of the container. So what we could do is that each of the icons, I'm going to give them a display of grid. Then I'll say place items. I'll give it center. And now we can see an underline underneath these icons. That's because they are anchor tags, and by default anchor tag have a text decoration of underline. So I'm going to head to my style of CSS. So I'll create another general class just under these inputs. I'll create an anchor tag class. I'll say text decoration. I'll give it none. And that's going to ensure that that little underline underneath our anchor tags are not visible. And also we are going to reduce the opacity of these icons to actually make it look better. So I'm going to get back. I'm going to say opacity. Then I'm going to use 0.8. And that's going to reduce the brightness of these icons. It's going to be kind of dull a little bit, which actually makes for a better UI. Then next, on hover of this link, when someone hovers on this link, we add a hover pseudo class. I want it to have a background color of light gray. Okay. And when I hover on them, you can see that background color on each of these icons right here, these link icons right here. But they are too kind of tiny, so I'm going to add a padding to them. So I'm going to add a padding to this anchor tag. I'm going to say padding 0 top and bottom, then left and right. I'm going to give it 40 pixels. Now when I hover on them, you can see that they now have a padding to them. Now with this, we are done styling the center nav, so we're going to start styling the right nav. So I'm going to go to my index.html file. I'm going to get rid of this p tag right here, this right nav p tag. So in my right nav, I'm going to add an anchor tag. And this anchor tag is not going to go anywhere. But it's going to have an icon. It's going to have a class of Facebook Messenger. Hope I'm spelling that correctly. Then I'll drag this down 1, 2. And this one is going to be grip. And the last icon is going to be bell. Save that. And you can see we have these 3 icons right here. So I'm going to head to my style of CSS file. Now for this right nav bar, first of all, I'm going to give it a display of flex. Now I want each of the items to have a gap of 10 pixels. And that's going to add a margin between each of the elements in that container. Now next, we want these icons to be at the extreme end. We don't want them to be around here. We want them to be at the extreme end. So what we are going to do is that we're going to give this right nav bar a justified content. I'll say flex end. And that's going to ensure that they are going to be arranged at the end of their container. That's flex end. So next, we have to start styling the individual icons. So I'm going to go to my style of CSS file. I'll just copy this right here. I'll paste that underneath here. Then I'll put in the anchor tag. I want to target the anchor tag. First of all, I'm going to give it a width of 40 pixels, a height of 40 pixels, and a background color of this light gray color right here. And now you can see our anchor tag right here with this light gray background color. Now next, I have to ensure that the items of this anchor tags are at the center, and also the anchor tag is circular. Now to make the anchor tag circular, I'm going to give it a border radius. I'll use 50%. Then to place it at the center, I'm going to use this streak wire. I'm going to give them a display of grid. Grid. Then I'm going to say place items at the center. Save that. Now you can notice that the icons are now at the center of the anchor tag. Next, I'm going to give it a font size of 1.3 rem, then a background color, or not background color, a color as a text color of black. Just use black. Now that we have done styling these icons at the right nav bar, now let's actually add our image. So I'm going to go back to my index.html file. Now down here, I'm going to create a div. And this div is going to have a class name of Rightsidebar image. Then inside here, I'm going to have an img tag, and this img tag is going to point to our images folder and it's going to access our image1.jpg file. Okay. Then the alt text is going to be profile pic. I'll check out the output and you can see our image right here. Very, very, very large. So let's style it up. So I'm going to copy this class name I added, this Rightsidebar image. Sorry, not Rightsidebar image, right navbar image. I'll copy this right navbar image class. I'll go to my style of CSS. Then I'm going to say nav.Rightsidebar. Then I want to target this class inside there. Then I'm going to give it a height of 40 pixels, a width of 40 pixels. Then after that, I want to target the image in there. So I target the image in there. I'll give the image a width and height 100% width, height of 100%, then border radius of 50% to make it circular. And now you can see the image right here. So we're going to give it an object fit of cover to actually make it look better. So I'm going to say object fit. I'm going to use cover and also cursor of pointer. And now you can see our image right now is looking really, really good. So next, we have to start working on getting our page layout and structure. So I'm going to head back to my index.html file. Now I'm going to close up this nav tag. We are done here. So down here, I'm going to create a div. I'm going to give this a class name of container. And inside this div, we're going to have an aside, which is basically going to be our sidebars. Then this one is going to have a class name of Leftsidebar, and it's going to have a p tag. I'm going to say Sidebar. I'll copy that down. This one is going to be Rightsidebar, and in between them, I'm going to have a main. It's going to have a class name of feed. There's going to have a p tag of feed. Okay, I'll save that, check out the output, and we can notice that the items of that container are underneath our navigation bar. That's because our navigation bar has a position of fixed, which means it's not in the document flow. Now, since this container is in document flow, it's going to start at the top of the web page and it's going to be underneath this nav bar. So what we are going to do is I'm going to copy that container, copy this container, head to the style of CSS file. And down here, after our nav, we're going to paste that container class right here. Then we're going to say this is going to have a margin top of 80 pixels. Now you're going to notice that the elements are going to start after the nav bar, not underneath the nav bar. Now in the finished project, you're going to notice that this left sidebar is going to be fixed at the left hand side, while this right sidebar is going to be fixed at the right hand side. While this feed section is going to be the feed section we can actually scroll through, which means we have to fix this to the left hand side, we have to fix this to the right hand side. So let's do that. I'm going to go back to my index.html file. I'm going to copy this left sidebar. I'll go to my style of CSS file. Now I have to label this. So down here, I'm going to say this is the size for my left sidebar. Comment that off. Then down here, I'll paste that class name right here. And the left sidebar is going to have a position of fixed, and it's going to be fixed at the left hand side, left of 0, then top of 0. It's going to have a width of 25%, a height of 100 VH. Then we can give it a background color to actually see. So say background color, I'll give it green. And you can see our left sidebar right here. But the problem is that our left sidebar is actually covering our navbar. We don't want that to be so. So what we could do is that we can give this navbar a z-index property. So I'm going to go up and give this nav. I'll give it a z-index of 999. And that's going to ensure that no element is actually going to overlap this navbar. It's always going to be on top of any element in the web page. And before I give the navbar a z-index, you will notice that this sidebar started from the top of the web page. Let me remove that again so you can see that. I'll take this off. Then you're going to notice that it's starting at the top of the web page. We don't want it to start at the top of the web page. So we're going to give it a margin top. I'll give it a margin top. Then I'll use 50 pixels. Margin top of 50 pixels. You're going to notice that it's going to start right here. It's going to start right here. Now let's do the same for our right sidebar. So I'm going to copy these styles. I'll drag this down. Then instead of position fixed at the left hand side, I'll say position fixed at the right hand side, right of 0. And it's going to still be at top of 0, width of 25 pixels, height of 100 views. I'm changing the background color to blue this time around. Then I'll save that. And it's still at the left hand side, and it's covering the left side bar. Why is that? That's because I did not change the class name. It's supposed to be right side bar. And now you're going to notice that the right sidebar is on the right hand side, while the left sidebar is at the left hand side. Now next, let's start working on the feed section. So first of all, let me label this. This is the styles for the right side bar. I'll comment it off. Then why down here it's going to be the styles for our feed section. I'll comment that off. And down here I can say dot feed. Now the feed section is going to be at the middle and it's not going to be fixed. You can actually scroll through it. So what we are going to do to ensure that it's fixed at the middle is that we're going to give it a margin left and a margin right to ensure that the items are at the center right here. So for the feed, I'm going to give it a margin top and bottom of 0, left and right of 13%. I'm going to give it a minimum height of 100 VH. And last, I'm going to give it a background color so you can actually see. So I'm going to say background color. I'm going to give it red. And now we can see the feed section at the center of the web page. We can actually scroll through the feed section. We have our left sidebar here, our right sidebar, and we have the feed section right here. Now that we've gotten the layout for the web page, I'm going to get rid of these background colors. I'll get rid of this. I'll get rid of this. And I'll get rid of this. Now before I start working on our left side, but I just realized that I didn't add those notification and message counts to these icons at the left nav bar. So let's quickly do that. So I want to go to my index.html file. I'll open up this nav again, then I'll scroll down right here in this right side nav. So inside this anchor tag, this notification anchor tag, I'm going to add a div. And this div is going to have a class name called icon. And inside this div, I'm going to have a span that's going to say 5. Now I'm going to style this up. So I'm going to head to my style.css file. Just before this right navbar image, I want to create this style up here. So I'm going to say nav.right navbar. Then I want to target the anchor tag inside the right navbar. Then inside that anchor tag, I want to target this .icon class. Okay. Then I want to give it a width of 20 pixels, a height of 20 pixels, and a background color of this hex color right here. Okay. Now returning back to the web page, you can see that red box right here. Now let's style this up to make it more better. I'm going to give it a font size of 0.8 rem. Then a text color, a color of white, as this white variable color right here. and a border radius of 50%. Now this is going to make it circular. Now let's check it out. Now you can see that that little box is not circular, but the 5 is not positioned at the center of this red circle. So let's do that. So the trick we are going to use, I'm going to give it a display. We're going to say grid. Then we're going to use place items. Then we're going to say center. And that's going to ensure that that 5 is at the center of this circle right here. But right now, it's not actually positioned the way we want it. We want it to be positioned at the top right here, around here. That's where we want to be positioned. So we have to give it a position of absolute. So back to my style of CSS. So I'm going to give this a position. I'll say I want it to be absolute. I want it to be at the top of 0 pixels. Then I want it to be at the right of 0 pixels. Now when I save this and return back to the web page, you're going to notice that that circle, that red circle, is now at the extreme end of our web page at the top right corner. Now what's happening here is that we give this a position of absolute, but we are not telling the red circle which container to be positioned absolute to. Why is that? That's because this one right now has a position of static, because every HTML element, when you add them to the web page, by default they have a position of static, and you cannot position an element absolute to an element that's static, which means you have to give it another kind of positioning before you can position this red circle absolute to it. So to solve this problem, we're going to say, instead of leaving this as position of static, I'm going to say I want to give this anchor tag a position of relative. And that's going to ensure that we cannot position this red circle absolute to this anchor tag container right here. But it still doesn't look good. I want to shift it up a bit. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to give it a top of -2 pixels and a right. Give it a right of -2 pixels. That's way better. Yeah, that's way better. So next, let's add the unread message count for this one. So I'm going to go back to my index.html file. I'm just going to copy this div right here. Then inside this messenger anchor tag, I'm going to paste that in here. Then for this one, I'm going to say it's going to be 8 unread messages. And now you can see that circle with 8 on it in this messenger icon right here. Now we can start working on the left sidebar. For the right sidebar, we're going to have this container right here with this image and this Emmanuel name. Then we're going to have these icons and these names right here. And also when we scroll down, you're going to see that we're going to have a shortcut section. We're going to have online education and these other content right here. So let's start working on that. So I'm going to head back to my index.html file. Now I'll collapse this nav again. Now inside this aside, I'll just get off this left sidebar, take off this p tag. Now inside this aside, I'm going to create a div. And this div is going to wrap around everything that's going to be inside this first section, this Emmanuel name, and this up to this point. That's what this div is going to wrap around. Inside this div, I'm going to create an anchor tag, which is not going to go anywhere. Inside this anchor tag, we're going to have an img tag that's going to point to the images folder. I'm going to access our image1.jpg, and the alt there is going to be profile pic. Then it's going to take a p tag that's going to say Egbon Emmanuel. I'll save that. Now you can see we have our image in the web page and it's very large. So let's style up that image. I'm going to head to my style.css file. I'm going to go to my left sidebar styles. That's this left sidebar styles we labeled right here. And down here I'm going to say left sidebar. Now to target the anchor tag inside this left sidebar, and inside the anchor tag I want to target the image inside the anchor tag. Okay, I'll give it a width of 35 pixels, a height of 35 pixels, a border radius of 50%. That's going to ensure the image is circular. Then an object fit, I'll use cover. Now the image is actually better. You can see the image right here. But let's add some styles to the left sidebar and give it some padding. So I'm going to go to my left sidebar styles, this left sidebar styles right here. I give it a padding 20 pixels top and bottom and 15 pixels left and right. Now that is going to ensure that the contents of this left sidebar are not too close to the edge and are not too close to this navbar. It's going to add a padding around them. Okay. Next, I want these elements to be arranged horizontally, not vertically. So you have to give them a display of flex. So I'm going to take this, I copy this right here. Up here, I'm going to paste that right here. Then I'll say this anchor tag, I want to give the element inside it a display of flex. And that's going to ensure that the two elements inside the anchor tag are placed side by side and they are arranged horizontally. So I'll give it an align items of center to center them vertically. Then I'll add a gap between the items of 12 pixels. Now they are looking way better. So next we are going to style this text. So I'm going to go to my style of CSS file. I'm going to copy this right here. I'll paste it underneath here. Now I want to target the p tag inside this anchor tag. So I'll put a p here. First off, I'm going to give it a color. I'm going to use this color right here, ash 1111111. Then I'll give it a font size of 0.9 rem, a font width of 600, and an opacity of 0.9. Now what we are going to work on next is that when we hover on this, we want a background color on this link. So let's work on that next. For that, I'll just copy this. I'll paste that underneath this place. Then I'm going to say on hover. I'm going to add a hover pseudo class. When someone hovers on this, I want this anchor tag to have a background color of light gray too. Okay. Now when I hover on this, you're going to notice that that light gray too gets applied. But I actually want to make it better, so I'm going to add a padding around the anchor tag. So for the anchor tag, I want to give it a padding. I'm going to have a padding of 50 pixels top and bottom, 10 pixels left and right. I'm also going to apply a border radius. I'm going to use 7 pixels. Now when I hover on it, I'm going to notice that the link is actually looking better this way. Now let's add the other links, that's the ones with icons. So I'm going to go back here in my index.html file. I'll just copy this link and I'll drag this down. Now this one is not going to have an image, it's going to have an icon. And the class name of the icon is going to be class of far user friends. And you can see the icon right here. So I'm going to change this text to friends. So I'm going to say instead of Igbo Emmanuel, that p tag is going to be friends. Now next, I want to style up this icon. So I'm going to go to my style of CSS file. I'm going to copy this right here. And then I'm going to paste that. Now I want to target the icon inside the anchor tag. First off, I'm going to give it a font size of 1.7 rem, a color of blue, and lastly opacity of 0.8. Now you can notice that the icon is looking better now. So I'm going to add the next one. So I'm going to go back to my index.html file. I'll copy this icon, then I'm going to drag this down, and this one is going to be fast store, and it's going to be marketplace. And now you can notice that we have the other link right here. Now what I'm going to do now is that since we already understand we created these links, I'm just going to paste the other links right here. Now I've pasted them in my index.html file. You can see all the other icons and the other text right here. And what we are going to work on next is this line that's actually dividing this left sidebar. It's dividing the left sidebar to two parts, the top side and the bottom side. So I'm going to add this line, okay? So in my index.html file, I'm going to wrap this div that contains all those links. So we are done here. I'll wrap this up. Underneath, I'm going to create a div. I'm going to give this div a class name, and I'm going to give it line. I'm going to copy this class name. I'm going to head to my style of CSS file, scroll to the bottom. Now this is going to be general styles because I'm still going to use this line for the right sidebar for my feed section. So this line is going to be a general style. So down here I'm going to say general styles. I'll just comment that off so that we understand what we are doing here. So I'll paste that class right here. And this line is going to have a height of 1 pixels. It's going to have a background color of dark gray. It's going to have a margin Top and bottom is going to have 10 pixels. Left and right is going to have 0. Then I'm going to save that. When we check out the output, you can see the line right here. Underneath these links right here, you can see the line right here. But it's too pronounced. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to reduce the opacity. I'm going to give it an opacity of 0.2. That way, it's kind of dull a little bit, which is really good. I just want it this way, not too bright. So next, we're going to add that text right here that's going to say shortcut. So let's do that. So I'm going to go back to my index.html file. Now, underneath this div tag, I'm going to create a p tag. And this p tag is going to say your shortcut. So I'm going to give this p tag a class name of sidebar text. And I'll copy that class name. I'll head over to my style.css file. Now, underneath this line, I'm going to paste that class right here. And this is also going to be a general style. It's going to be a style I'm going to use for the left sidebar and the right sidebar. So I'm going to put it under these general styles. It's going to have a margin, top and bottom of 15 pixels, left and right of 0. A font weight of 600. And a color of dark gray. Okay. And now you can see that p tag, your shortcut. That shortcut is not spelled correctly, so I'm going to add a T to it. Where is it? Yeah, right here. Your shortcut. Yeah, that's way better. Next, we have to start actually creating a shortcut. Now, for the shortcut, you're going to notice that these shortcuts are actually kind of similar to this. So we don't have to rewrite this style. So all we can do is just copy this and paste this right here. So let's do that. So I'm going to go back to my index.html. I'm going to open up this div and I'm just going to copy this one with the image, copy the first one. Then I'll close it up. I'm going to head down to after this shortcut p tag and I'll just create a div that's going to have all the shortcuts and I'll paste that in here. Then for the image, instead of image 1, I'm going to use shortcut 1. Then for this one, I'm going to say shortcut. For the alt text, I'm going to say shortcut. And now you can see that shortcut link right here, but the name is not going to be Ugbo Emmanuel. This particular is going to be mobile games. So I'm just going to go to this text, then I'm going to say mobile games. Now for the shortcut images, we don't want it to be circular. Okay, we don't want it to be circular like this one. We want it to be curved, yeah, but not circular. So what we are going to do, we're going to add an inline style to each of these images. So I'm going to say, I'm going to add a style right here. And this is going to be border radius. It's going to be 10 pixels. And that's going to ensure that it's going to have a border radius, but it's not going to have a border radius of 50% and it's circular like this one. Okay. I'm going to add the other two shortcuts. So I'm going to go back to my index.html file. I'm going to copy this, then I'll drag this down twice. 1, 2. Then for this one, it's going to be shortcut 2. And this one is going to be shortcut 3. I'll save that. And you can see those images are going to be here. Now you are going to notice that we cannot scroll through our left sidebar. Now, what's happening is that, remember we gave this left sidebar a height of 100 VH, which means it's going to have the height of this laptop screen right here. That's the height we gave to it. Okay, which means when it starts to overflow, the overflow is going to be hidden. Right now there are more content underneath this place, but we can't see them. Why? Because they are hidden. So to solve this problem, I'm going to give this left sidebar an overflow Y of auto. That way when it overflows, you can actually scroll to see the items at the bottom. So I'm going to head back to my style.css. So I'm going to go to my left sidebar, go up here. Now down here, I'm going to say I want to give it an overflow Y of auto. Save that. Now when I go back, I'm going to notice that I can now scroll down. I can now scroll to the bottom of the left sidebar. But the problem is that when I scroll to the bottom, we're at the bottom, but we still cannot see the last one. So for the left sidebar, I'm going to give it a padding bottom property. So I'm going to say padding bottom. I'm going to use 60 pixels. And that's going to add a padding to this last element right here, and we can actually see it better. Now let's update this other one. This is going to be online education. This one is going to be food lovers. So the second one is going to be food lovers. So instead of mobile games, I'll just change this to food lovers. And this one is going to be online online education. Now with that, we are basically done styling the left sidebar. Now all that's left for us to do is to get rid of this ugly scroll bar right here. So let's do that. To do that, I'm going to head to my style CSS file. Now underneath this left sidebar styles, I'm going to add this left sidebar. I'll say dot left sidebar, then colon, I'm going to say WebKit scroll bar. I'm looking for WebKit scroll bar. Then I'm going to give it a width of 0. And that's going to ensure that our scroll bar has a width of 0 and is not visible to the UI. We are basically done with the left sidebar. So next, we're going to start working on the right sidebar. Now for the right sidebar, we're going to have this friend request section. We're going to have this birthday section. We're going to have this contact section. And then we're going to have this groups section. Okay. So inside my index.html, I'm going to wrap up this div because we are done here. Then I'm basically done with the left sidebar. So I'm going to wrap up this aside. Then I'm going to go to the right sidebar, get rid of this. Then we can also label this. I'll just label this. I'll call this left sidebar. I'll call this one the field. Then I want to call this one the right sidebar. So inside the right sidebar, we're first of all going to add a p tag that's going to say friend requests. And this is going to have a class name of that general style we created. This general style we created, this sidebar text right here is going to have that class name. So I'm going to say class name of sidebar text. I'm going to go back to the web page and you can see that sidebar text right here. But we have a problem. This friend request text is too close to this navbar. Okay, so we're going to apply the similar padding we added to this left sidebar. We're going to add that similar padding to this right sidebar. So in my left sidebar, I'm going to go and check the padding I added to my left sidebar. So I added the padding of 20 pixels and 15 pixels. I'm going to copy that. I'm going to go to my right sidebar. Then I'm going to paste that padding property right here. And that's going to ensure that it's going to apply a padding to all the elements inside this right sidebar. So next, we're going to start working on this friend request right here. So let's start doing that. So I'm going to head back to my index.html file. Now, underneath this bit, I want to create a div. Now, this div tag is going to have a class name called friend requests. And it's going to have an image. That's going to point to the images folder and access image2, image2.jpg, and the alt is going to say friend requests image. Then underneath this image, we're going to create a div. Now this div is going to have a class name of requests info. Inside this div, we're going to have a p tag that's going to have this name right here, Zara Anaya Patel. Then I'm going to have a span that's going to say 13 mutual friends. Now after this span, I'm going to have a div. And this div is going to have a class name of action buttons. It's going to be the buttons, the confirm button and the decline button. So the first button, we're going to add a button right here. So the first button is going to be confirm. As confirm the friend request. While the second button is going to be decline the friend request. Now you can see that the image is very, very humongous. So let's start styling it up. So I'm going to head to my style.css file. Inside my style.css file, I'm going to scroll to my right sidebar style right here. So I'm going to start styling the contents of the right sidebar. So I'm going to target the right sidebar dot right sidebar dot the friend request. That's this friend request class right here. So I'm going to copy that. This friend request class right here. I'll paste that here. Now I want to target the image inside that friend request container. Now I want to give the image a width of 60 pixels, a height of 60 pixels, an object fit of cover, and a border radius of 50%. And that's going to ensure that our image has a height and width of 60 pixels and it's actually circular. So next, we're going to give it a display of flex because we want the elements inside this friend request container to be arranged side by side, to be arranged horizontally. So we're going to give it a display of flex. So I'm going to go back to my style of CSS. So I'm going to copy this. Then up here, I'm going to paste that right here. And the friend request container, I want it to have a display of flex. Now I'm going to align the items. I'm going to use flex stats. Then I'm going to give it a gap of 10 pixels. Now I'll save that. Now when I return back to the web page, you're going to notice that the elements of the friend request container are arranged side by side. The image is on the left hand side and the request info are on the right hand side, and there's a gap between them. Now next we have to style up this p tag. Okay, so I'm going to go back to my style of CSS file. I'm going to copy this. Then I'm going to paste that underneath here. Then I'll target the pin there. Now you notice that in our final project, you're going to notice that this p tag right here, this p tag, all these p tags are actually similar to this p tag. Now we don't have to rewrite those styles because in CSS, in programming in general, you don't want to write as less code as possible. You want to keep your code dry. That is, don't repeat yourself. So what we are going to do is that we're going to apply similar styles to this p tag right here. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to copy this class thing right here. I'll cut this off. I'm going to head up to my left sidebar styles. Around here is that p tag. Yeah. So around here. So what I'm going to do, I want to apply these styles to the p tag of my left sidebar and to that of my right sidebar. So I'm going to add a comma. So I'm going to paste that right here. That way they are going to share these styles right here. So when I save that, you're going to notice that this is actually bold and it has similar styles with this one. They are going to share the styles. That way I don't have to rewrite the styles for this other p tag right here. This friend request p tag. So next I'm going to style this span tag. So I'm going to go back to my style of CSS file. I'm going to scroll down to my right sidebar styles. I'm going to copy this. Then I'll paste that underneath here and I'll target the span tag. The span tag, I'm going to give the font size of 0.8 rem and the color of dark gray. That's way better. So next we have to style up these action buttons. So I'm going to go back to my style of CSS file. I'll copy this. Then I'll paste that underneath here. Now I want to target this class right here, this action buttons class. So I'll just copy that class. Then I'll paste that right here. Now for the action buttons, I want them to have a margin. Top and bottom, I want 15 pixels. Let me use 15 pixels. Left and right, I want 0. I want a display of grid. Grid template columns. I'm going to use one FR, one FR because I want both of them to occupy equal volume. Then I want to give them a gap of 8 pixels. Now you're going to notice that the buttons are not extending to the end right here. That's because we are not telling this info container to occupy as much width as it can. Okay, remember that we gave this a display of flex. I'll give this a fixed height of, I think, about 60 pixels. So now we have to tell this container to stretch out and occupy the remaining width of this friend request container. So to do that, I'm going to go to our style of CSS file. I'm going to copy this. I want to apply a style to the friend request info container. So down here, I'll paste that right here. Now I want to target this container right here, this request info container. So I'm going to copy that. I'm going to go to my style of CSS file, paste that right here. And I want to give this a flex of 1. And that's going to tell it to actually stretch out and occupy the remaining space after the image has occupied a width of 60 pixels. Now I'll save that. Now when I go back to the web, you're going to notice that these buttons are going to stretch out and they are going to occupy the remaining space of the container. And next, let's start styling the buttons. So I'm going to go back to my style of CSS file. I'm going to copy this. I want to paste that right here. I want to target the button. Now, first of all, I want to give this an outline of none and a border of none. And that's going to get rid of the outline and the borders on this button. But we want to apply these styles generally, so I'm going to cut this off. I'm going to go up here and create a general button style, just the way we did for our anchor tag. I'm going to say button, and I'll paste that in here. Or no need to create a button class. I'll just share the styles between both of them. I'll paste that, button. That way, both the input and the button by default are going to have a border of none and outline of none. And when I save that, I'm still going to notice that the outlines and the border are not on this button, even when you click on it. So first of all, I want to give this button a background color of this blue color right here. Then I'm going to give it a color of white. I'll save that. Now you can see that the button has a background color of blue and a color of white. So next you have to apply a padding to it to make it look better, and also a border radius to curve these edges. So I'm going to say padding. Top and bottom, I'm going to say 8 pixels. Left and right, I'm going to say 0. Then also have a border radius of 8 pixels. And then you can see that the buttons are actually looking better. So next I want to give this text inside this button a font weight of 600 to make it a little bit more bold. So I want to give it a font weight. I'll use 600. Then I'm going to give it a cursor of pointer. And with that, we are done styling these buttons. So let's create another friend request. So I'm going to go back to my index.html file. I'll just wrap this container of this friend request container, and then I'll just drag that down. Okay. And for this one, it's going to have a name of Olivia Scott, and it's going to be 2 mutual friends. Then for the image, you're going to say image 3. Okay. And now you can see we have 2 friend requests right here, Olivia Scott and Zara Naya Patel. But they are kind of too close to each other. So what we could do is that we're going to apply a margin between the 2 friend requests. So I'm going to go back to my style.css file. Go up to that friend request. So I'm going to say margin. Top and bottom is going to have a margin of 10 pixels, and left and right is going to have a margin of 0. And that's going to add a space between these 2 friend requests. So next we're going to start working on the birthdays section. That's going to say Syracuse and 6 others have birthdays today. Then we're going to add this line on top of this one and also the line right here. So let's do that. So inside my index.html file, I'm going to wrap these 2 friend requests inside a div. Okay. Now I can easily wrap them up. So I'll just wrap this up. I'll wrap this up. I'll cut them. Then I'll paste them inside a div container. Then I'll just wrap up this div. Then underneath this div, I'm going to create another div. And this div is going to have a class of line, which is going to be this line right here. Now after that, I'm going to add another line, which is going to be this other line right here. Now in between these 2 lines, I'm going to create the birthday section. Now in between these 2 divs, I'm going to create a p tag, and this p tag is going to say birthdays. Now it's going to have a class name of sidebar text. I'm going to save that and check out the output, and you can see that text right here, birthdays. Next, we're going to add an anchor tag. So after this p tag, I'm going to add an anchor tag. And this anchor tag is not going to go anywhere, but inside this anchor tag, we're going to have 2 items. First of all, we're going to have an icon, and this icon is going to have a class name of gift. Then after that, we're going to have a p tag that's going to say Syracuse and 6 others have birthdays today. I'll save that, check out the output, and you can see we have that text right here and we have that icon right here. And what we want to do next is that we want this Syracuse and this 6 others to have a font of bold. So what we are going to do, we're going to wrap them inside a span tag. So I'm going to go back there, I'm going to copy this, I'll just cut this off. I'll create a span tag. And inside that span tag, I'll paste that name right there. Also, these 6 others, I'm going to paste them inside a span tag. And when I save that, you're going to notice that nothing really changes. That's because we've not applied a style to the p tag or even the span tag. I'll save that. Now copy that class Go to my style of CSS file. Now underneath here, I'm going to say dot right sidebar. Then I'll paste that class right here. Now first of all, I want to give the items inside this anchor tag a display of flex. Then I'm going to give them a gap of 15 pixels. I'll save that. And you can notice that they are now arranged side by side. So next, I want to style up this icon. So I'm going to go to my style of CSS file. Right here, I'm going to say dot right sidebar dot belt this. Now inside this belt this anchor tag, I want to target the icon in there. Now you're going to notice that this icon and this icon are going to have a similar size. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to ensure they share the same styles. So I'm just going to cut this off. Instead of adding another style right here and a font size to it, I'm going to cut that off. I'm going to go up here. I'm going to look for that left sidebar icon I styled, which is this icon right here. Then I'll just paste that right here. That is going to ensure they are going to share these similar styles right here. And when I save that, you're going to notice that that style is going to be applied to this icon right here. But the problem is that I want this icon to have a yellow color, so I'm going to add an inline style to this. So I'm going to go back to my index.html file, and that icon, I'm going to say style, I'm going to say color, then I'll paste in this hex color right here. And that's going to ensure that this icon is actually yellow, but it's going to have the same font sizes as these other icons right here. And the next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to start up this text. So I'm going to go to my birthdays container. I'm going to scroll down. Right here, I'm going to give this a font size. I'm going to use 0.9 I'll give it a color of hash 111111. Okay. Now you're going to notice that the font size of this birthday text is now 0.9 rem and it now has a color of black. Next, we're going to target this span inside here. This syracuse and this is other span. So I'm going to go back to my code. I'm going to copy this. Then I'll paste this right here. Then I want to target the p tag. Now inside that p tag, I want to target the span. I'm going to give it a font weight. Then I'm going to say 600. And that is going to ensure that the span tags has a font weight of 600. Now with that, we are basically done with this birthday section. So next, we're going to start working on this contact section right here. So I'm going to go back to my index.html file. I'm going to wrap this birthday container, wrap this up. I'm done here. Now after this line, we'll create a p tag. And this p tag is going to say contacts. And it's going to have a class name or sidebar text. Check it out. I'm going to see where I have that text right here, contacts. The next, I'm going to create a div underneath this p tag. And this div is going to have a class name of contacts. Inside this contact, we're going to have an anchor tag. Now this anchor tag is not going to go anywhere. Then inside this anchor tag, we're going to have an image. And this image is going to point into the images folder. I'm going to access image4.jpg. Then the alt is going to be contacts. And it's going to have a p tag. I'm going to say Elijah Mo. Now save that. Check out the output, and you can see we have this humongous image right here in the web page. So let's start styling this up. So I'm going to go back to my style of CSS file. First of all, I'll copy this name right here, this class name. I'll go to my style of CSS file. I'm going to say dot right sidebar dot. I'll paste in that contact right here. Now I want to target the anchor tag inside that contact container. Now you're going to notice that this link right here in our finished project, these links right here are actually similar to these links right here, which means we can actually reuse the styles. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ensure that they share similar styles. So I'm just going to cut this off. I'm going to scroll up to my left sidebar styling section. Then right here, I'm going to add a comma. Then I'll paste that right here. Then I'll save that. Then check out the output. So you're going to notice that we still have that image really large right here. The styles are not being applied. That's because we only applied these styles to that container already, and we are not applying these other styles to it. So we can also do that here. We can say dot, then on hover. Then we can also add that styles right here. Then target the image. I'll save that. Now when I go back to the web page, you can notice right now we now have that styles being applied to this element right here. Also, you have to apply the style to this text. So I'm going to go back. Then for this one, I'll just paste that right here. Then target the p tag inside the anchor tag. and that's going to apply the style to our p tag. Then I go back to my index.html file, create another contact. I'll just fold this together, then I'll just drag that down. For this one, it's going to be image 5, and the name is going to be this name right here, Isabella Chen. I'll save that, go back to the web page, and you can see we now have another contact right here. Now that we understand how we style this, so I'm just going to add the remaining 3 contacts. Now I've added the remaining 3 contacts, and you can notice that the remaining 2 are underneath this place. You cannot see them because they are hidden from the viewport, and that's because we've not given this right sidebar an overflow property. So I'm going to go to my right sidebar, go to my style.css file. I'll scroll down to my right sidebar. Where is that right sidebar? Right here. Then I'm going to say overflow y. I want it to be auto. And now we can now scroll through the elements of our right sidebar, but we cannot see the element at the bottom properly. So we're going to add a padding bottom to it. So I'm going to say padding. I'm going to say bottom. Then I'm going to say 80 pixels. And that's going to ensure we can actually scroll down and see the elements of our right sidebar at the bottom properly. Now we have to get rid of this ugly scroll bar. So let's quickly do that. So I'm going to copy this right sidebar class. I'm going to head to my left sidebar. I already created a style for this. I'll scroll down. Where is that style? Yeah, there's that style right here. I'll paste that right here. Then I'll just copy this WebKit scroll bar. I'll paste it to the right sidebar. I'll save that. And that's going to ensure that they share the same styles and we don't have that scroll bar on this right sidebar. So the next thing we are going to work on is that we want to add these little green dots on these images right here to actually show that the user is actually online. So let's quickly do that. So I want to come back to my index.html file. I'll wrap a div around my image tag. Now inside this div, I'm going to have a div that's going to have a class name of online dots. So let's style this up. So I'm going to copy this class name, go to my style.css file, I'll scroll down to my right sidebar. Then down here, I'm going to place that class right here. So I'm going to have a width of 12 pixels, a height of 12 pixels, a background color of this hex color right here. Now save that. Go back to the web page. You're going to notice that we now have that green dot right here. But we don't want that green dot to be here. We want to position it absolute to this image right here, right here. That's what we want to do. So we have to add a position absolute to this green dot. So my style.css, so I'm going to give this a position. I'll use absolute. It's going to be at the bottom of 0. Bottom 0. There's going to be right 0. And when I save that, as usual, you're going to notice that that green dot is not going to be positioned absolute to this image. It's going to be positioned right here. And that's because we've not added a position of relative to the container that wraps around this image. So let's quickly do that. So I'm going to go back to my index.html file. Now, this container I added, this div I added to wrap up this image and this online dots. I'm going to give it a class, a style of position. I'm going to use relative. And that's going to ensure that it's positioned absolute to this image right here. Now let's actually style up this dot better. So first of all, I'm going to give it a border radius. I'll give it a border radius of 50%. That's going to ensure it's circular. Then a border of 2 pixels, solid white. So with that, we are done styling these online dots. So I'm going to apply these online dots to these other anchor tags right here. I'll go back to my index.html file. I'll just copy this. Then I'm going to paste that here. I'm going to add a div around this image. So I'm going to notice that it's not on the second one. So I'm just going to add the dots to the other ones. Then I'm going to return back. So I've added the dots to the other anchor tags. And with that, you are basically done with this contact section. Let's move on to the group section. So I'm going to add a line. First of all, I'll just wrap up this div right here. This div for this contacts. There's that div that wraps around the contacts. This div right here. I'll wrap this up. Now underneath this div, I'm going to create a p tag. And this p tag is going to say groups. And it's going to have a class name of sidebar text. I'll save that. Now check out the art. When we scroll down, you can see that text right here, groups. Now next, what we want to do is I want to actually add that anchor tag right here. Now you can notice right now that anchor tag is going to be similar with these ones right here, that group anchor tag. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to copy one of these. I'm going to paste it down here. So first of all, I'm going to create a div tag. And this div tag is also going to have a class name of contacts. Then I'll just copy one of these. Then I'll paste it right here. Then I get rid of this dot and this div of relative. I don't need it for this one. I'll save that. When I go back to the web page, you can see that we have that right here, but it has this image of Elijah Moore. So I'm just going to say the image is going to be group 1.jpg. Rid of this Elijah Moore. I just paste CSS to beginners right here. Now I think we are basically done with the right sidebar, but there's no line between this group section and this contact section. Let's quickly do that. So between this div and this pizza, I'm going to add a div, and this div is going to have a class name of line. And we have that line right here. Yeah, these buttons right here. Now for these confirm and decline buttons, this decline button is supposed to be gray, while this confirm button is the one that is supposed to be blue. So let's quickly resolve that. So I'm going to go to my style of CSS file. So in my style of CSS file, I'll create a quick ID style. It's going to be confirm button. Now for this style, it's going to have a background color of blue and a color of white. So I'm just going to put that style right here. Now for the other button, the decline button, I want it to have a background color of light gray too. Okay. And when I save that, you're going to notice that both the buttons are going to have a background color of light gray too. But we want this confirm button to be blue and have a text color of white. So what we are going to do, we're going to copy this ID. I'll copy this ID, this confirm button ID I created. I'll go to my index.html file and I'm going to look for that. That will be in here. Yeah, that will be in here. Now inside this confirm button, I'm going to create an ID. I'll paste in that ID name right here. Same thing for the other confirm button. I'll create an ID. I'll paste in that ID name right there. That way, that confirm button is going to have its own unique style. It's going to have a background color of blue and a text color of white. And with that, we successfully started up our right sidebar. So let's start working on our feed section. Now for the feed, we're going to have three sections. First of all, we're going to have this create post section. We're going to have this status section that we can scroll through status of users. And then we're going to have this section that's going to house our posts. So let's start working on that. So I'm going to go back to my index.html file. I'm going to wrap everything in this friend request. I'll wrap everything here up. Then basically I'll just wrap everything up in the right sidebar because I'm done with the right sidebar. So I'm going to go to my feed section, get rid of this P. And inside this feed container, first of all, we're going to have a div that's going to have a class name of create post. And inside this create post div, we're going to have another div that's going to have a class name of input section. Inside this input section div, we're going to have an image. And this image is going to point to the images image 1.jpg. Then the alt text is going to be profile pic. Then this input section container is also going to house an input, which is going to be of type text and it's going to have a placeholder of what's on your mind. Now when we turn back to the web page, you can see we have this image right here. It's very large. So let's quickly style that up. So I'm going to go back to my feed section. Down here underneath my feed section where I labeled where we're going to style up our feed. This feed section comment right here. I'm going to say .feed .create. Sorry, spell that create correctly. Post dot. I'm going to copy that class right here. This input section class dot input section. So I want to target this image inside the input section. I'll paste that right here. Then I want to target the image. So I'll give the image a width of 40 pixels, a height of 40 pixels, a border radius of 50%, then object fit of cover. And you're going to notice our image is now styled up right here. Now let's style up this create post container. So for the create post container, I want to create that up here. I'll say dot field dot create post. First, I'm going to give it a box shadow of 0, 2 pixels, RGBA 0, 0, 0, then opacity 0.1. Then I want to give it a background color of white, then a padding of 10 pixels, and lastly border radius of 12 pixels. And you can see that our create post container is actually looking better. And let's start styling these inputs and this input section container. So I'm going to target the input section, so I'll just copy this on top of this style. I'll just paste that right here. First, I'm going to give it a display of flex, align items, I'll say center, and lastly I'll give the elements inside there a gap of 15 pixels. Yeah, way better. Can type on this input. So next we have to style up this input inside this input section. So I'm going to go back to my style of CSS. So I'm going to copy this. I'll paste that underneath here. Now I want to target the input inside the input section. I'll give it a padding, top and bottom 8 pixels, left and right 12 pixels, a background color of light gray, and a border radius of 30 pixels. Save that and check out the output, and you can see that input right here. But we have a problem, and the problem we have is with the size of the input. It's not stretching to the end. Now since this image is occupying a width of 40 pixels, so we have to ensure that this input occupy the remaining space. So I'm going to give this input a width. I'll give it 100%. And that's going to tell the input to stretch out and occupy the remaining space after this image has occupied 40 pixels. And when we do that, you can notice that the image is kind of compressed a bit because the input is now actually compressing the image. So to solve this problem, we're going to ensure that the image does not shrink. So we're going to give this image a flex shrink of 0. Now when I save that, you're going to notice that the image is not going to be shrinked anymore. The image is going to retain its width and height of 40 pixels, and the input is going to occupy the remaining space of this input section container. Now next, we have to increase the font size of the text inside the input. So let's quickly do that. So I'm going to my input. Where's our input? Down here. I'll give it a font size of 0.95 rem. And now we can see that the text inside the input is now a little bit larger. We can actually see it clearly. So next, I'm going to add a line underneath this input section. So I'm going to go back to my index.html file. Now underneath this div right here, I'm going to create a div. And this div is going to have a class of that line class we created before. And you can see that line underneath this input section right here. But the line is actually a bit pronounced because when we use it on the right sidebar and the left sidebar, we are adding it to this gray background right here. Now we are using it on a white background. So I'm going to reduce the opacity a bit further. So for this line, I'm going to add a unique style to it. I'll say style. Now I'll say opacity. I'll say 0.1. So next we are going to add these 3 buttons right here. 1, 2, 3. So let's do that. Inside my HTML, underneath this div, this line div, I'll create another div. And this div is going to have a class name of post tabs. Now inside this div, we're going to have another div that's going to have a class name of post tab. It's going to represent each of the post tab, whether it's a way, a video. And inside this div, we're going to have an icon that's going to have a class name. I'm going to say far video. And it's going to have a span that's going to say live video. Now I'm going to copy this and drag this down twice. 1, 2. And the name of this icon is going to be far image. And the name of this one is going to be far film. And the span tag of this one is going to say photo video, while the span tag of this one is going to say real. Let's check out the output. And you can see those elements we just added right here. So let's start styling them up. So I want to copy class name, post types. I'll copy this class name. Now I head to my style.css file. Now underneath this style right here, I'm going to say dot feed dot. I'll paste that class name right here, post types. And the first time I'm going to add is a display of flex, because I don't want the elements to be arranged vertically down. I want them to be arranged side by side horizontally like this. So I want to give it a display of flex, a justified contents or space between. Okay. Now you can see that the elements are now arranged horizontally and they have a space between them. So next I'm going to target the individual post type. So I want to go to my style.css, so I'll copy this, I'll paste that right here, then I'll say dot post type. First of all, I'm going to give it a display of flex, and the reason I'm giving it a display of flex is that I want these items, this icon and this text to be arranged vertically center. I want them to be equal. That's why I'm giving it a display of flex, so that I can align it center. So I'll give it a display of flex, then I'll give it an align items of center, and that's going to ensure that they are actually at the center. I'll give it a justified content, I'll say center. Then I want the items to have a gap between them of 8 pixels. And you can see there's now a gap between this icon and this text right here. Okay. So next I'm going to give it a cursor of pointer. Now I want each of these post type right here to occupy equal space. So I'm going to give them a flex of 1. So I'm going to say flex. I'll give it 1. And that's going to ensure that they occupy equal space inside this container right here, this post types container right here. So next we have to style up this icon inside this post type and also the text. So let's start doing that. So I want to copy this. For the icon, I want to give it a font size of 1.3 rem. Then I'll paste that underneath here again. Then I'll target the span as the text. So I'll give it a color of dark gray, a font weight of 600, a font size of 0.85 rem, and opacity of 0.8. And you can see those text right here, they are styled and they have a color of gray. Now for the color of the icon, I cannot add the same colors to them. I cannot add the color inside this style right here, because each of these icons is going to have its own unique color. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to add unique styles to each of these icons inside my index.html. So I'm going to my index.html file. And for this icon, I'm going to add a style. And this icon is going to have a color of this hex color right here. The other icon is going to have a color of this hex color right here. And for the last icon, it's going to have a color of this hex color right here. And now you are going to notice that each of the icon now has a unique color. This one is red, this one is green, and this one is yellow. Now next, we're going to add a hover property to each of these items right here. So let's do that. So I'll head to my style.css file. Now down here, I'm going to copy this because I want to add a hover property to this post type. So when someone hovers on this, I'll add a hover pseudo class. When someone hovers on it, I want to give it a background color of light gray. I'll save that. And when I hover on each of these items, you can see that background color being applied to it. But we can actually make it better by adding a padding to it. So now this post type style, I'm going to add a padding of 10 pixels top and bottom, 2 pixels left and right. Then I add the border radius of 10 pixels to curve the edges. And when I go back to the web page and hover on this, you can see that really cool effect right here. Now with this, we are done with this create post section. Let's start working on our status section. So for the status section, we're going to have these images right here that we can scroll through. These status images right here. And also we're going to have the profile picture of the person that posted this status up here. That is profile pictures positioned right here. And also we're going to have this first one right here with this text create story. So let's start working on it. So I'm going to head back to my index.html file. I'm going to close up this create post we are done here. I'll close this up. Now underneath this create post div, I'll create another div. I'll give this a class name of status section. And the status section is going to have a div. And each of these divs is going to have a class of status. I'll just drag that down. 1, 2, 3. So we have 4 of them right here. So let's start styling them up. So I just copy this status section class name. I head to my style.css file. Now underneath this place right here, I'm going to start creating this style. So dot to feed dot. I'll paste in that status section name we copied. Now first of all, I want to give each of the items inside this status section a display of flex. Then I want a gap between each of the items, a gap of 10 pixels. Then I want this status section to also have a margin, top and bottom 15 pixels, left and right of 0. So now we have to target each of the status. So I just copy this right here. I'll paste that underneath here. Then I'll target each of the status. It's going to have a minimum width 110 pixels, a height of 200 pixels. Now I want to give this a background color so we can actually see the item. So I'll say background color. I'll give it red. When I go back to the web page, you can see those red boxes right here. 4 of these red boxes right here. But we have a problem. If I decide to go back to my index.html file and add more status, so I'll say 1, 2, 3, 4, you are going to notice that these status items will start to overflow. So to solve this problem, so that when these items start to overflow, we can actually scroll through them, we're going to give this status section an overflow X of auto. That way, when the items start to overflow, we can easily just scroll through the items. So next, let's quickly get rid of this scroll bar right here. So I'm going to go back to this code. I'll copy this. Then I'll paste that underneath here. Then : web kit scroll bar. I want to give it a height of 0. That should get rid of that scroll bar. Yeah, that's gotten rid of that scroll bar. So now that we have gotten the structure of this status section, let's start styling it up. So I'm going to go back to my index.html file. I just need one, so I'm going to get rid of these other ones. Get rid of this. Now I'll go to my style.css, so I'm going to get rid of this background color of red. So inside my index.html file, inside this status container, I'm going to add an image. And this image is going to point to the images folder. It's going to access status 1.jpg. And the alt text is going to be status. So when I go back to the web page, you can see that image right here inside this container, and it's very, very large. So let's style it up. So I'm going to go back to my style.css file. First of all, I'm going to add an overflow of hidden inside this status container. That way, when an image overflow, it's going to be hidden. That way, when I go back, you're going to notice that we cannot actually scroll through it anymore. It's going to be hidden when it overflows. So next, let's target the image. So I want to copy this. I'll paste this underneath here. Now remember, we already gave this status a minimum width of 110 pixels and height of 220 pixels. So all we have to do is to tell the image to occupy 100% width and height. So say width 100%, height 100%, then object fit of cover. Now we'll check out the output. You're going to notice that the image now occupies 100% width and height of its status container. So now we're going to add a border radius to it to ensure that the edges are curved. So I'm going to say border radius. So this status container right here, border radius, I'm going to use 10 pixels. And that's going to ensure that the edges around these images are actually curved. And lastly, I'll just give it a cursor of pointer. So now next, we can start working on that image that's going to be positioned right here. So let's do that. So I'm going to go back to my index.html file. Underneath this image, I'll create a div. I'll give this div a class name of profile picture. And inside this div, I'm going to have an image. This image is going to go into the images folder and it's going to point to the image2.jpg, and the alt text is going to be profile picture. So next, let's style this up. So I'm going to copy this name right here. I'm going to head to my style.css file, and down here after this status image, I'm going to say dot feed dot status section dot status. Now paste in that class name right here. So here I'm going to add a width of 40 pixels, a height of 40 pixels, and a border radius. I'm going to say 50% to ensure the image is circular. Now when we come back to the web page, you can see that we cannot see our image right here. And that's because, remember, we gave this status a overflow of hidden, which means any elements that overflows this container is going to be hidden from the viewport. So to see it, let's position that image right here at the top left corner. So I'm going to give this a position. I'm going to use absolute. Then I'm going to say top 10 pixels, left 10 pixels. I'm going to save that. And when I go back to the web page, you can see that we still cannot see that image. And the reason why we cannot see that profile image is that we position that profile image absolute to this container. And remember, right now this image has a position of static, and you cannot position an element absolute to an element that is of position static. So we have to give this status container a position of relative. So I'm going to go up here in this status. I'm going to say position, then I'm going to say relative. That way, when we go back to the web page, you can see that profile image at the top left corner of this status. So next, we can notice that the border radius is not being applied. That's because the image is actually overflowing that profile picture container. So to actually see that curved edges, we're going to give this profile picture container an overflow of hidden. And that's going to ensure when the image overflows, it's going to be hidden. So it's going to actually apply that border radius to the image. So next, we're going to add that border around this image. So let's quickly do that. So in this profile picture, I'm going to say it's going to have a border 4 pixels solid blue. I'll save that. When I go back to the web page, you're going to see that we now have a blue border around this profile image. Now with that, we are done styling each of the status. So I'm going to add another status. So I'm going to go back to my index.html file. I'll just take this, I'll copy this up, then I'll drag this down. Now for the second one, it's going to be status 2. The image is going to be status 2. Then the second image is going to be image 3. I'll save that. And now you can see that we have another status right here. So now that we understand how we created this status section, so I'm going to add more status to this. So underneath this second status right here, underneath this second status, I'll just paste the rest status right here. And you can see the rest status right here. So I'm going to save that and check out the output. And you can see we have all the other status right here. We can actually scroll through them. So what we are going to work on next is that for our finished project, you're going to notice that the first image is going to have this create story text right here. It's going to be our create story image. So let's start working on that. So inside my HTML right now, I'm going to copy this first status right here. Then I'm just going to drag that down. Now instead of the image for the status 1, I'm going to say it's going to be image 1. And I'm not going to need a profile image for this one. So I'll just get rid of this. So I'm going to save that and go back to the web page. I'm going to notice that the first status does not have a profile image. So next, I'm going to give this status container an ID. I'll give it an ID of create post. And inside this status, so I'm going to add a p tag that's going to say create story. Under this p tag, I'm going to have a div that's going to have a class name of plus icon. So I spell the icon correctly. Now inside this div, we're going to have an icon, and this icon is going to be class of far plus. I'll save that. When I go back to the web page, I'm going to notice that we cannot see those items right here. Remember that we gave it an overflow of hidden. So what we are going to do, we are going to target this and actually style this image and reduce the height of this image. So I'll copy that ID name. I'm going to head back to my style.css file. Now I need this feed status section style here. I'm going to paste in that ID. First, I'm going to use the pound. Now I'll paste in that ID name. Now, first of all, I want to target the image. So I want to target the image inside this create post. I want to give this image a height of 70%. When I go back to the web page, you're going to notice that our image now has a height of 70%, and we can see our icon and our create story. And I also want this to have a background of white. So I'm going to give this create story ID a background of white. I'll paste that right here. I'm going to give it a background color of white. And when I go back to the web page, you're going to notice that it now has a background of white. So next, we're going to style up this create story text and this plus icon right here. So first of all, let's style up this icon right here. I'll copy this. Then I'm going to head to my style of CSS file. And in my style of CSS file down here, I'm going to say create post. Then I'll target that class name right here, that plus icon inside this create post container. First, I want to give it a width of 40 pixels, a height of 40 pixels, a background color of this blue color right here, and a border radius of 50%. Now I'm going to save that and go back to the web page, and you can see that blue circle right here. Now what I want to do next is that I want to position that blue circle right here, just at the bottom of this image right here. So let's do that. So I want to give this plus icon container a position. I'll say absolute. That's going to be positioned at the bottom, 20%, left 50%. And I'm going to give it a transform translate x of negative 50%. Next, we want to position this icon at the center of this icon container. So let's do that. So I'm going to give it a display. I'm going to say grid. Then place items. I'm going to use center. Then I'm going to add a color property. I want the color of the icon to be white. And I also want the icon container to have a border around it. So I'm going to add a border. 5 pixels, solid, white. I'll save that. And when I check out the output, you can see that icon right here, and it's looking really, really good. So next, I'm going to style up this create story text. So I'm going to go back to my style of CSS file. I want to copy this create post. Copy this. Paste that underneath here. Then I'll target the p tag in there. First of all, I'm going to margin top of 20 pixels. And that's going to ensure that there's a margin between it and this icon right here, and we can actually see it properly. Then I'll give it a text align of center to center the text. Text align, I'll use center. I'll give it a font size of 0.75 rem and a font width of 500. I'll save that. Now you can check out that p tag, and you can see that it's looking really, really good. And with that, we are basically done styling the status section. So next, we are going to start working on this post right here, creating each post. So let's start working on that. So I'm going to go back to my index.html file. Now I'm going to wrap everything in this status section, just wrap up this div. Now underneath this status section, I'll create another div. And this div is going to have a class name of posts. And each of the div inside this div is going to have a class name of posts. Now each of these posts is going to have a post header that is going to contain this image, the name of the user that created the post, the timestamp, and also these icons at the right hand side at the post header. So let's do that. So I want to create a div inside this post, and this div is going to have a class of post header. And inside this post header, I'm going to have a div that's going to have the class name of user details, as the username and the user image, and also the timestamp. So first, we're going to have an image in here. This image is going to point into the images folder, and it's going to access image4.jpg. And right here, we're going to say the alt text is going to be profile picture. And after that, it's going to have a div. It's going to have 2 p tag in there. And the first p tag is going to have this name in there. And the second p tag is basically going to say 4 hours ago. And then on the right hand side of this header, we're going to have another div that's going to have a class name of header icons. That's these two icons that is going to be at the extreme end right here. These two icons are going to be at the extreme end right here. So this div is going to have two divs, and each of these is going to have a class of header icon. And inside this first one, you're going to have an icon that's going to have a class of fas, fa, ellipsis, h. Now just copy that and drag that down. Then this one is going to have a class name of fas, mark. Then I'll save that. When I go back to the web page, we can see the elements we just added right here. You can see them right here, but the image is very, very large. So let's start styling this image. Down here, I'm going to say dot feed, dot post header. I want to target the image in there. First of all, I'll give this image a width of 40 pixels, a height of 40 pixels, a border radius of 50%, and object fit. I'll use cover. Now check it out again. And you can see that we've styled that image and it's now circular right here. So next, what we are going to do is I want to give this post container, that's each of the posts, we want to give it a background of white. So let's do that. So up here, I'm going to say dot feed dot post dot post. So each of the posts, I want to give it a background color of white, a box shadow of 0 2 pixels, 2 pixels, RGBA 0 0 0 0.1. I'll save that. Check out the output, and you can see that it now has a background of white, and we now have a box shadow on it. So I'm going to add a style to actually curve these edges. So I'm going to say border radius, give it a border radius of 18 pixels, and that's way better. It's not curved at the edges. So let's start styling the post header. So for the post header, I'm going to copy this. I'll paste this underneath this style right here. I'll say dot post header. First of all, I'll give it a display of flex to ensure that the elements are arranged side by side. Then I'll give it a padding of 10 pixels. Then lastly, I want to justify content. I want a space between the content of space between. I'll save that. When I go back to the web page, you can see that right now that they are now arranged horizontally and there's a space between them. I will now have a padding around this post header right here. So next, we're going to start applying styles to the left hand side of this post header. So in my style of CSS file, I need this place. I'm going to copy this right here. I'll paste that underneath these styles right here. Then I'll say dot user details. First, I want to give it a display of flex to arrange them side by side horizontally. Align items of center to ensure they are vertically centered. A gap of 8 pixels and a cursor of pointer. Let's check out the outputs. And you can see they are arranged side by side. So next, let's style up this p tag. Now these are both p tags. So if I try to style both of them the same way, you're going to have similar styles. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to give them a class name. I want to go to my index.html file, and this one I'm going to give it a class name of the username as the user's name. Then I'm going to give this one a class name of dates. Okay. So in my style of CSS, I'll copy this. I'll paste this underneath this place. Then I'll target the username. That's that username class I just created. I will a font size of 0.85 rem and a font weight of 600. Then I'll target the dates. I'll paste that underneath here. Dot dates. I'll give one a font size of 0.8 rem, a font width of 500, and a color of dark gray. Save that. Check out the output. Now with that, we are done styling the left hand side of the post header. Let's start styling the right hand side. So I will go back to my index.html file. I'll just wrap up this user details. I'm done here. Then I'm going to copy this header icons class. Go to my style.css file. So I'll scroll down underneath this. I'm going to say .feed, .post, .post header. Now I want to target the header icons. Okay. First of all, I'm going to give it a display of flex to arrange the icons side by side, and I'm going to give each of them a gap of 6 pixels. I'll save that. Check out the outputs, and you can see they are now arranged side by side. So next, I'm going to style each of the icons. So I'll copy this class name right here, paste that underneath here. I want to target each of the header icons. So I'll say header icon. It's going to have a width of 35 pixels, a height of 35 pixels, a border radius of 50% to make it circular. Then I want to copy it again. I'll paste that underneath here. Then on hover of this icon container, I want to give it a background color of light gray. I'll save that. And I go back to the web page and I hover on this. You can see that it's actually circular and has that background of light gray, but the icon is not in the center, and it's not, the cursor is not actually pointer. So I'm going to give this a cursor of pointer and position it at the center. So up here I'm going to say cursor, I'll say pointer. Then I'm going to give it a display of grid. Then place items, I'll give it center. When I go back to the web page, you can see now that when you hover on it, it's actually looking really, really good. And the last thing I'm going to do right here is I'm going to change the font size of the icon. I also change the color. I'm going to go back to my style.css file. Down here, I'm going to give it a color of dark gray. Then a font size of 1.3 rem. Check out that. So when I hover on it, it says really good and now has that gray color. So with that, we are done styling the post header. Now after this post header, I'm going to add a picture that's going to represent our post text. So I'll come back to my HTML file. I'll pop this post header. I'm done here. Then underneath this post header div, I'll create a p tag which is going to have a class name of post text. And it's going to have this text right here, feeling grateful for the little things today. So I'll copy this class. I'll head to my style.css file. And down here, I'm going to say .feed, .post. I want to target that class name. I give it a margin, top and bottom, 10 pixels, left and right of 0, a font size of 0.9 rem. Let's check out the output. And you can see we have that text right here. But I have to add a padding to that text, but the text is too close to the edges right here. So I'm going to give it a padding. Top and bottom 0, left and right 10 pixels. That's going to ensure it has similar padding as our post header. So next we are going to add our post image. So I'm going to go back to my HTML file. Underneath this p tag, I'm going to create an img tag. Now this img tag is going to go into my images folder and it's going to access post1.jpg, and the alt text is going to be post image. Okay, and I'll give it a class name of post image. Now copy this class name. I head to my style.css file. Underneath this post text, I'm going to say .feed, .post, now pasting that class name right here. First of all, I'll give it a height of 500 pixels. I'm going to give it a width of 100% because I want it to occupy the entire width of its container. And lastly, I'll give it object fit of cover. I'll save that. When I go back to the web page, you can see we have that image right here. So next, we are going to start working on the items that are going to be at the footer of the post. These 468 people like this, these images, these comments right here, and also all these action buttons right here. So let's do that. So I want to go back to my index.html file. underneath this image, I'll create a div. And this div is going to have a class name of post footer. Footer. Inside this post footer, first of all, it's going to have the post reactions. So it's going to have a class name. This div is going to have a class name of post reactions. Inside this post reaction, we're going to have another div. We're going to have a class of likes. And inside these likes, I'm going to have a div. I'm going to have a class name of users. And this is the container. It's going to house the images of the user that actually liked this post. I'll say users. And this div is going to have 3 images in there. Images, image3.jpg. I'll copy that down twice. This one is going to be image4.jpg. This one is going to be image5.jpg. Okay. Now underneath this user's container that is going to house the images of the user that liked the post, we're going to have a p tag. This p tag is simply going to have 498 people liked this. Now after we added everything for our likes container, underneath this likes container, we'll add a p tag. And there's the 5 comments. Now let's start this up. So I'm going to head back to my style of CSS file. Underneath here, we'll say dot feed. I'll target each post. Then I'm going to target the post reactions. That's this post reactions container. Copy that. Head to my style of CSS file. Paste that right here. I'll target the users container inside this post reaction. Then inside that users, I want to target the img in there. First of all, I'll give the images a width of 20 pixels, a height of 20 pixels, a border radius of 50%, and an object fit of cover. I'll save that. Coming back to the web page, you can see we have these items right here. So what we want to do is I want these ones to be positioned on the left hand side. I want these 5 comments to be positioned on the right hand side. So we have to give it a display of flex and justify content or space between. So I'll go back to my style of CSS. So I want to copy this right here, the post reaction container. And up here, I'm going to give it a display of flex, a justified content, or space between. And that's going to have space between these elements right here. They're going to be of display flex, and there's going to be space between them. So next, I'm going to add a padding to this element right here, but I generally want to apply padding to all the elements in the footer, the post footer. So I just target the post footer. So in my style of CSS file, I'm just going to go up here and say dot feed dot post footer. Footer. I give it a padding, top and bottom 0, left and right 10 pixels. And that's going to ensure that every element inside this footer container has a padding on the left hand side and the right hand side. So next we're going to style up this left hand side of this footer right here. So let's do that. So I'll copy this right here. And for the elements inside the likes container, I want to give them a display of flex, a gap of 10 pixels. I'll save that. Go back to the web page. You can see they are now arranged side by side. So next I'm going to style up these pictures, and next I'm going to ensure that these images actually overlap each other. So I'm going to go to my style of CSS file. I'll just copy this right here. I want to target the p tag inside this likes container. The p tag in there. For the p tag, I'll just give it a font size. I'll use 0.9 rem. I'll save that. And you're going to notice that the font size of this p tag is going to reduce. So let's style up this image. Now what we want for this image is that we want the image to actually overlap each other. That's what we want. So let's do that. So to do that, I'm going to go to my images. I'm going to give them a margin left of -10 pixels. And that's going to ensure that they are going to shift to the left hand side by -10 pixels. But you see, the problem we're having is that we only want this second images, these last images and the middle images to shift to the left, to overlap the first images. That way they can overlap each other. But we don't want the first one to shift to the left. Okay, we want to maintain that padding of 10 pixels in this container. So what we are going to do, we're going to target this first image right here. So I'll come back to my style of CSS, so I'll copy this. Now to target the first image, so I'll paste that right here. Then I'll say colon first child. I want to give it a margin left of 0 pixels. And that is going to ensure that these two images, the last one and the middle one, are going to have a margin left of negative 10 pixels. But this first image, as the first child, is going to have a margin left of 0. Okay, so let's style up this 5 comments text. First of all, I'll quickly give it a class name. I'll give this comment text a class name of comment text. Okay, I'll copy that class name. I add to my style of CSS file, and down here .feed .post reactions. Then I'll paste that right here. I'll give it a font size of 0.9 rem and a color of dark gray. Save that. Check out the output, and you can see that we've completely styled this 5 comments right here. So next, we're going to add a line underneath this post reaction. So I'm just going to wrap up that post reaction, wrap this up. Underneath this, I'm going to add a line, div.line. Save that. Go back to the web page. You can now see that we have a line underneath this place. Right? The line, we can't actually see the line because it's at the bottom right here. So next, let's start working on this part right here. This like button, this comment button, and this share button right here. So underneath this line, I'm going to create a div. And this div is going to have a class name of action buttons. Okay. Now you will notice that in our finished project, these buttons right here, are similar to these buttons right here, which means you can actually reuse the styles. You can basically actually even reuse the HTML code. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up here to my create post. I'll go up here and I'll just copy everything in this post tabs. I'll just copy everything here. I'll wrap this create post back. Then I'll go to my action buttons container. I'll just paste that right here. I'll save that. Now when I go back to the web page, you're going to notice that we now have those items right here. All we have to do now is just update the text and update the icons, and also add a padding to the bottom of this action button container. So I just go to the index.html file. I just add an inline style. Say style padding bottom. Use 10 pixels. And that's going to ensure that we have a padding at the bottom of this action container. We have a padding underneath it. So next, let's update the text and the icons. Okay. First of all, I'm going to get rid of this custom color I added. I'll just get rid of this. Get rid of this. Get rid of this. For the first one, it's going to be like. For the second one, it's going to be commit. And for the last one, the span is going to be share. And for the icon, the first one is going to be far, thumbs up. The second one is going to be far, comments. And the last icon is going to be fast, share. I'll save that. Go back to the web page. And you can see those icons right here and the text, like, comment, and share. So next we have to style these icons. So I'm going to go back to the HTML file. I'm going to apply a style to this. I'll give you this color right here. And also apply an opacity of 0.7. I'll copy that because they are going to have similar styles. Paste that right here. Then I'll paste that right here. When I save that and go back to the web page, you can notice that our icons are now styled and they are looking really, really good. Now with that, we are basically done styling each of the posts. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create another post. So I just wrap up this post right here. So I'm going to wrap everything up in this post. Now just drag that down. Again, now we now have two posts right here. but they are too close to each other. You see the posts, they are too close to each other. I want a little space between them, so I'm going to add a margin between these two posts. So I'm going to go back to my style of CSS. So I'm going to scroll up to my post styles. Let's make that style. That's right here. I'll say margin bottom. I'll use 18 pixels. Go back to the web page. Again, I'll now have a margin between these two posts. Okay. So next, I'm going to update the details for this second post. So let's do that. I'm going to go back to my index.html file. Open this up. And this is going to be post 2. And the post text is going to be this right here. Paste that right here. Now also update the post header. The name this time around is going to be Emma Collins. The timestamp is going to be 2 days ago. Then for the profile picture, let's use image5.jpg. I think that's it. I'll go back to the web page and you can see we've created another post right here. So next I'll create another post. I'm going to fold this up. Drag this down. For this one, the name is going to be Noah Bennett. Timestamp is going to be 2 hours ago. Then the post text is going to be this text right here. Then the post image is going to be post 3. Then for the reactions, let me just make these images random. Say 5. Say use 6. Then I'll use 2. Just random images there. Then for this one, say 48 people like this. Then 3 comments. Then I'll scroll up to this one. This one just make random 2. Say 5. I'll say 6. Say 7. And for this one, just say 72 people like this. Save that. And when I go back to the web page, you can see now that we are done with the post section. And we did not update this image. Let's quickly update this image. Down here, the image is going to be image 7 for the third post. Yeah, Noah Bennett. And with that, you are basically done styling the post section. So the last thing we are going to do in this feed section is that we're just going to add that footer underneath here, that copyright footer. So I'm going to wrap up this post. I'm done here. So I just wrap this up. I'll wrap this up. Now underneath this div, I'm going to create a footer. And this footer is going to have a p tag. I'm going to just copy. Right. 2025. And after this p tag, I'm going to have another p tag. That's going to say Igbon Tech YouTube channel. Save that. When I go back to the web page, we can see that footer text right here. So let's style it up. So I'll head to my style of CSS file. Now underneath everything, underneath all the code, I just add a footer code right here. Footer. First of all, it's going to have a margin. Top and bottom of 15 pixels, left and right of 0. It's going to have a text align or center. A font size of 0.8 rem. A font weight of 600. And a color of dark gray. I'll save that. Go back to the web page. And you can see that footer text right here completely styled. But I want to add a margin between this first p tag and the second p tag. So I just target the p tag. Down here I'm going to say footer. I'll target the p tag. Margin top and bottom. I'll give it 8 pixels. Left and right I'll give it 0. Save that. And you can see they actually look better this way. So with that, you are basically done styling this entire web page. So what we are going to work on next is that we are going to ensure that this web page is actually responsive in all screen devices. So I'm going to create another CSS file. Up here, I'll create a file called this responsive.css. Then I'll just link that to my index.html file. Go up here, I'll drag this down. Instead of style.css file, I'm going to say responsive.css. And inside my responsive.css, I'm going to have 3 breakpoints. First of all, I'm going to have a breakpoint for laptops. And the breakpoint is going to be 1280 pixels. I'll comment that off. Next one, we're going to have a breakpoint for tablets. And the breakpoint is going to be 1024 pixels. I'll comment that off. Then lastly, we're going to have a breakpoint for tablets. And the breakpoint is going to be 768 pixels. And I'll also comment that off. Okay. So up here, I'm going to say at media max width of 1280 pixels. Okay. Now I'm going to say I want to give the body of this web page so I can test if it's working a background color of red. And let's test if that's working. So I'll go back to my web page. When I start to shrink this, I'm going to notice that for screen sizes that are less than 1280 pixels, the body is going to have a background of red. And you can see that breakpoint right here. So I'll just get rid of this. Now at these breakpoints, let me check what I want to remove from the screen. Now at this breakpoint, what I want to actually remove from the screen is going to be this search input right here. Okay. So I'm going to copy the styles for that search input. Go to my style.css file, scroll all the way up to my navbar. There's that search input. Yeah, got the styles for the search input. So I'll copy that styles. So for the search input, when the screen size is less than 1280 pixels, I want to give it a display of none. That's going to ensure that when you reduce the screen size for less than 1280 pixels, the search input is going to disappear and the items in the navbar are not going to be compressed. So once we start to reduce this, you're going to notice that the elements of our web page start to compress. So what we want to do is that when it shrinks to less than 1024 pixels, I want to get rid of the right sidebar. Okay, so I'm going to go to my responsive.css. Now down here, I'll just copy this. I'll paste this. Instead of 1280 pixels, I'm going to say 1024 pixels. Then here, I just want to remove the right sidebar. So I'll say dot right sidebar. I'll just give it a display of none. I'll save that. And when I return back to the web page and we use this further, you're going to notice that we'll get to a breakpoint where our right sidebar is going to disappear from the UI. So next, we want to ensure that this feed section occupy up to this point right here. Remember, we'll give this feed section a margin of 30%. When we go back to our style.css file, you're going to notice that we gave this a, where's that feed section? Yeah, we gave it a margin 30% left and right. So what we have to do is get rid of that margin we added. So I'm going to go to my responsive.css. I'll just copy that name right here, feed. I'll go to my responsive.css. Now down here, I'm going to say I want to give it a margin of 0. Okay. When I go back to the web page, I'm going to notice that it's not going to have any margin. It's going to occupy the entire width. But we also want it to have a margin left because we also want to be able to see our left sidebar. So for that, we're going to give it a margin left of 30%. Okay. When I go back to the web page, you're going to notice that it now has a margin left. Okay. But it's too close to this right hand side. So we have to add a margin there too. So I'm going to say I want to add a margin right of just 3%. That's going to actually look more better. So now we can move on to the next breakpoint, which is 768 pixels. So I'll just copy everything here. I'll paste it underneath this 768 pixels. Then for this one, I'll just change it to 768 pixels. Instead of giving the right sidebar a display of none, I'm going to give the left sidebar a display of none. And I go back to the web page. And when I shrink this screen further, I'm going to notice that we'll get to a point where our left sidebar is going to disappear from the UI. And now we want this feed section to occupy the entire width. Okay. So I'm going to give it a margin left of 0, a margin right of 0, Now I'll save that. When I go back to the web page, you're going to notice that it's going to occupy the entire width. But we want a space at the left hand side and the right hand side. Okay, we don't want it to occupy up to the edges. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to give this a width of 95%. That's going to ensure that it occupies 95% of its entire container. But you can see right now that it actually occupies 95%, but it's not at the center. Okay, so we have to give it a margin auto. So I'm get rid of this margin 0 property. Now down here, I'm going to say I want to add a margin of auto. I'll save that. When I go back to the web page, you're going to notice that it's not centered right here. So next thing you're going to notice that the items for our navbar are starting to shrink a lot. We can no longer see the third icon of the right navbar. So what I'm going to do is that this center nav, I'm going to remove the center nav from this navbar and I'm going to position it fixed underneath the navbar. That way the other element is going to have a breathing space. So let's do that. So I'm going to go back to my style.css file and look for that center nav style. Center nav, yeah. I'm going to take the center nav. Now I'll take the center nav to my responsive.css. I'll paste that right here. First, I want to give it a position of fixed top. Now if I give it a top of 0, it's going to overlap this navbar. So I'm going to give it a top of 55 pixels. That way, remember that this navbar has a height of 55 pixels. So after the navbar, we're going to have that nav links underneath here. It's going to be of top of 55 pixels. So I'll say top. I'll give it 55 pixels. I'll give it a background color of white so that we can see it. Give it a left of 0 and a width of 100%. I'll save that. I'm going to go back to the web page. You're going to notice that that links are now positioned underneath this navbar right here. So next, I'll just reuse the padding. I'll take this, I'll paste this underneath here. Now remember, I will give each of the link a padding. Remember, I will give each of the link a padding of 0 top and bottom, 40 pixels left and right. So I'm going to reduce that padding. I'm going to say 0 top and bottom, then padding 0 top and bottom and 20 pixels left and right. Okay, you can shrink and you're going to notice that they are still going to look really good. Now after we've positioned this center nav fixed right here, you are going to notice that a part of our feed section is now being covered by this center nav. This create post imp is being covered. So what we are going to do is that we're going to give this entire feed section a padding top. So down here I'm going to say dot feed. I'll give it a padding top of 40 pixels. Okay, I'll save that. And now you're going to notice that it's going to start after these center links right here, and it's looking really good for mobile devices. Now with this, we have completely styled up this web page and it's looking really good. Now at this point, you can actually leave it like this, but I'm going to add some additional styles to make it look extra good on mobile devices. Now if you want to stop here, there's really no problem. It's already looking good, but I just want to add extra styles to ensure that it looks really good for mobile devices. So first of all, I want to target these icons for mobile screen devices. When I viewed it on my phone, it was looking too large for mobile devices, so I'm going to reduce the font size for mobile devices. So I'm going to go back to my style.css and copy that class, scroll all the way down. Where's that? Yeah, right here. I'll copy this. I'll take this to my responsive.css. Now underneath here, I'll just paste that right here. I'll give, instead of 1.3, I'm going to give it a font size of 1 rem. That way it's going to look smaller for mobile devices. It's going to actually look smaller for mobile devices. And also, since I've reduced the font size of this icon, I also want to reduce the gap between the icon and this text right here. Okay, so I'll just copy this. I'll paste that underneath here. Then I'll say gap of 4 pixels. That's going to reduce the gap between this text and this icon right here. And next, I want to reduce the height and width of this status section. This status right here for mobile devices, I want them to be smaller for mobile devices. Okay, so I'm going to go to my style.css and look for that class status section right here. This status right here, I'll just copy it. I'll go to my responsive.css. I'll just paste that right here. First of all, I'll reduce the height to 180 pixels. Then I'll reduce the minimum width to 90 pixels. I'll save that. Now you're going to notice that they are smaller for mobile devices, which actually makes for a better user interface. So finally, this image, I want to reduce the size for mobile screen devices. Okay, so I'm going to look for the style for that images. There's the style for the post image. Scroll up right here. The post image is right here. So I'll copy that style, go to my responsive.css, and down here I just give the image a height of 350 pixels. Okay, again you notice that the height now reduced to 350 pixels and it's actually looking way better. Now with that, we are basically done with this project. Now if you watch this video to the end, or you build this project together with me to the end, I just have to say, bro, you are going to be a great developer. If you enjoyed this tutorial, don't forget to smash on the like button and leave a comment below. And also, if you have any problems, leave a comment in the comment section below. And lastly, if you've not subscribed, ensure you do that and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss out on helpful web development tutorials like this. I'll see you in the next video.